The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL. You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Luke Braun, how is it going, my man? Long time no talk. How is everything in Vikings world?
Boy, it's interesting here, but isn't that always the case for both of us? Two of God's least favorite children.
Yeah. The equivalents on both sides of the spectrum, on the AFC and the NFC, a lot of familiarity there. Obviously, the Chargers are hosting this game on Thursday night at SoFi Stadium. So as the host, I will go ahead and let you kick things off. What do you think is the biggest story for the Vikings heading into this game?
Right now in Minnesota, the biggest story is JJ McCarthy, high ankle. When's he going to be back? What's the expectation when he is back? And what can we expect from Carson Wentz in the meantime? Over the course of the week, the Vikings gave JJ McCarthy a workout, see how it goes. But the Vikings haven't done a full practice. They're coming off a really physical, really long game against the Eagles, with 69 offensive reps. Everybody's really beat up. So they've been really restful. And plus a short week travel to the West Coast, which this is the third time the Vikings will have done that on Thursday Night Football, specifically to LA, 2 against the Rams. This is the first one against the Chargers. It's horrible, especially 18 days after they get back from a doubleheader in Europe. They got brutalized by the schedule here. So rest has been really important. And now they just they're not practicing for a week. So that to me is part of, this is the roughest part of the schedule, not because of necessarily who the best teams in the league are, but just because of the travel. But obviously, the thing is, how it was go into this week. Is he going to play? They give him a workout. He's not there. He's not going to do it. They said maybe if it were a Sunday game, but we're probably looking at JJ McCarthy returning next week against the Lions. So you all get Carson Wentz. Congratulations.
Yay.
It's been rough.
We wanted to see that storyline, right? Obviously, with Jim Harbaugh being the coach of the Chargers and his former quarterback, J.J. McCarthy being with the Vikings, we were all excited to have that be some storylines heading into this week, but that was not to be, as obviously both teams are dealing with significant injuries. And fortunately for the Chargers, they're getting some very important pieces back on that offensive line, and it is extremely important that they get Joel out there, and that is definitely the biggest story going into this week for the Chargers, is getting some reinforcements back. After week 3, the Chargers were missing Joe Alt, Omarion Hampton, Najee Harris, Khalil Mack, Denzel Perriman, and plenty of other big pieces. And so now, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, Joe Alt is going to play. He said as much. He has missed the last several weeks with the high ankle sprain. They put him through a pretty rigorous workout last Sunday to see if he can go. He was doubtful for that game. He wasn't quite ready, but they had started his kind of practice. They didn't really want to put him on IR because if there's any chance to get him to play before the requisite 4 games, then they wanted to make sure to give him every opportunity to do that. And also, the Chargers already have a lot of guys on IR and designated to return, and there's only so many slots that they'll be able to utilize for that. So Joe Alt being back is
we're up against those
boost.
2. Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, it is so important for them to get Joe Alt back, because the Chargers offensive line has been a rough watch, Luke. It has been very, very tough to see Austin Deckles out there trying to do his best to protect Justin Herbert's blind side, along with the rest of the just subpar play that we've seen. So getting him back on offense, getting Khalil Mack back, and hopefully more involved in the game plan. He only played 12 snaps in his first game back. He actually notched a sack along with within those 12 snaps. So pretty effective there, but a very short day at the office. I expect that to expand quite a bit going into this game against the Vikings.
Yeah, we're right there with you with all of the injuries. A lot of guys going on IR designation to return. In fact, there's 121-day window. Maybe we're going to see it's a true questionable with Aaron Jones. I don't think he was designated out on the final depth chart or on the final injury report. So that's one to watch. However, it's an intriguing situation because Jordan Mason's been fantastic in his stead, and we might have a situation where you ride the hot hand there. But the Vikings are also, it's unclear who they're going to play at center. They have Ryan Kelly on IR right now. So the starting center is out. The backup center, Michael Juergens, dealing with a hamstring injury, went out in the Euro trip. Blake Brandel, who has never played center before, had to step in against the Browns D-line, which is a nasty D-line to have to do that against. Holds his own well enough to get the start against Philly. Total mess. Total disaster. Snaps going over Carson Wentz's head, giving up sacks.
I saw that.
So I don't know if they're going to stick with that again or if they're going to go, whoops, we kind of maybe got a little bit too wrapped up in the moment there. And they'll go back to Michael Juergens, who has been active, I think, and for all intents and purposes is past that hamstring injury. So there's all kinds of weird stuff, but we were down to 1 out of 5 starters on the O-line in London. So it's been a really rough injury season. And maybe that's kind of the story of this game is two teams that I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong here, underachieved based on the talent that they should have.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is due to injury and who can kind of overcome their problems a little better, who can figure out how to get more out of their depth.
That's 100% accurate. And I think for both of these teams, like it's been a struggle, especially for the Chargers, going up against some of the better teams, the better offenses. Like they just got their butts handed to them by the Indianapolis Colts. It was ugly. You know, they got beat by 2 touchdowns, and honestly, it could have been probably 3 or more. The Chargers were not sharp in that game, and they just got way too behind way too quickly. But I had one more question on the offensive line. We talked a little bit about it. Obviously, the left tackle of the Vikings popped up on the injury report very, very late with Christian Darrisaw. What do you have for that situation as far as his availability for tonight's game?
Yeah, Kevin Seifert covers the team for ESPN, and he kind of poked around about it. Essentially, after a big physical game against the Eagles, which Christian Darrisaw played all of. So for Chargers fans who haven't been watching this, Darrisaw's been on a pitch count sometimes this year as he's coming off of a horrible knee injury, ACL and MCL, that he suffered in SoFi on Thursday Night Football last time they made the Vikings do this. So we're going back to SoFi, but there's kind of been, play a full game and then you're a little bit still kind of recovering from it going into the next game, and you're either on a pitch count or you sit out it. So he is a true questionable right now. He was a DNP in the last practice report. But again, the Vikings only did walkthroughs. So all of these injury designations are estimates. So it's like even more cloudy and unknowable, but he had to get a little bit of treatment on that knee this week. And so it's a matter of, another one where if it were Sunday, he might be playing, but because it's a short week and there's travel to the West Coast and all these other factors, it's going to be touch and go. So if it's not Darrisaw, it would be Justin School, who has been a mess, just awful, and outplayed by Blake Brandel, who was drafted as a tackle, was a tackle in college, and actually I think played better than School when he had to go in because School got a concussion at one point. We've been down to third stringers in several places. But if I had my druthers, Blake Brandel would be the backup tackle, and then they would put Juergens back in at backup center. So we have a tackle playing tackle and a center playing center. But apparently, I don't know, the Vikings are smarter than that, I guess.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Peter, both sides seem to be playing down it's not a revenge game. There's no noise there, nothing at all. No, we're past that. We're
no,
happy.
Of course not. Why would anyone think there would be any issues? Why would Aaron Rodgers ever hold a grudge? That is just that would be so unlike him to do that, Chris.
Exactly.
It was funny because David Bakhtiari mentioned this, that it was going to happen, that Aaron Rodgers was going to say all the right things, and Matt LaFleur was going to say all the right things, and Jordan Love was going to say all the right things. But you would not be a human being if you didn't feel it a little, right? Like you would not be a red-blooded American man if you did not feel it just a little bit here, right? Because and you know, you could be anyone. If you're a competitor, you want this game a little bit more. They can say whatever they want. This game is going to mean a little bit more. I feel bad that they're going to put them in those horrible throwback uniforms for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
They look so bad, Peter.
Chris, why did they do that? Why did they? Aaron Rodgers, you get one shot at playing the Packers, and you're going to play in the. Come on, this should have been the 2010 Super Bowl rematch in terms of uniforms. Like, what are we doing? This is nonsense.
The Steelers, whenever they want to go to these alternate jerseys, the problem is all the good jerseys for the Steelers are classic looking. So like if you're thinking selling jerseys, you got to go with the crazy bumblebee look or like this look that looks, they all look ridiculous.
I have the same problem with the Packers, Chris, because I'm just like, the Packers jerseys are the throwbacks. It's fine. This is the jersey. This has been the jersey from time immemorial. Like, why are we doing this? And even more so in a situation like this. But you're so right. And even with Jordan Love, who Aaron Rodgers, by the way, treated with it is. I have been a critic for those Steelers fans listening that are not familiar with my work. For those of you not familiar with my game, I have been very critical of Aaron Rodgers over the years, and that's not going to be news to my listeners at all. But one thing that he did that I will say is more mature than I would say 98% of people would act is he resented the hell out of the Jordan Love pick, and he never ever took it out on Jordan Love. And that is an incredible testament to maybe a person's ability to compartmentalize. I don't know, but he always directed that anger at the Packers, not Jordan Love. Listen to anyone tell a story of the first couple years when Jordan Love was there. Rodgers was the guy to Love that Brett Favre never was to him, and he set out to be that. And that doesn't mean that the ending wasn't acrimonious. It was. That doesn't mean that Aaron Rodgers didn't want Mark Murphy and or Brian Gutekunst fired in 2021. He did. And so like, let's be honest about it. Aaron Rodgers is the petty king. No one is pettier in the NFL than Aaron Rodgers. And the good news for the Steelers is their coach is kind of just as petty, like Mike Tomlin. I loved last week when he was like, I don't know what the hell, like, what did he say? Andrew Barry must be smarter than me. Like what a just deliciously petty comment. And so that's why this works. That's why they're a good match, I think, in a lot of ways, because they share that, just like they are, you know, I can't say the word, but they are MFers in the best possible way as competitors.
No, I agree. Listen, man, they take this. Listen, Mike Tomlin has a thing called a petty game ball that he hands out, and it's like when a player is playing a team that he has a reason to be a little petty at, and they have a big game against them.
Oh my God,
he'll give them a little petty game ball. Like Russell Wilson actually exposed that to us a bit last year, and we were like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, Mike has like, you know, the whole petty game ball thing. He does that to guys, and Mike was like, you guys weren't supposed to know that. So Russell Wilson let us in on a little bit that last year, but listen. As a person who's already started to pick up on Aaron Rodgers' tendencies as the reporter in the room, Aaron Rodgers is really good at saying the right thing in the right moment to avoid the like he's doing all like when he got to Pittsburgh, I was worried like, man, how many times am I gonna have to watch the Pat McAfee show to see what he says is crazy and talks about vaccines?
Yeah, I live that life.
But He is, but he's stayed away from that in Pittsburgh. And then that's been refreshing for me as a reporter. But like, I've also started to pick up where he does play his game still. For example, the week leading up to the Jets, it's fine. The Jets are the Jets. I'm here to win football games. I'm here about to be about the Steelers. But when he beat the Jets, he was like, oh yeah, I let them know. Like that was a bit part. And after the game was over, he's like, yeah, let them know. But like he talked his talk a little bit after that game. And listen, that's fine. That's okay. But I also understand one of my things about do not give people bulletin board material. You do not give the other side put something to slap on the board on Friday and be like, you see what he said about you this week? And that's what Aaron Rodgers is avoiding. And that's what Matt LaFleur is avoiding because both sides respect each other. And I think that's the cool thing about this is that Matt LaFleur, Mike Tomlin, head coach to head coach, a lot of respect. Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, quarterback to quarterback, a lot of respect. And these two sides, they say, hey, let's not give each other let's give the other side any ammunition. Let's focus on ourselves and get through this and come out with the dub. Then we can start talking.
Remember the Seinfeld episode about the fully mutual breakup and how that does not exist. This was a fully mutual breakup. Now that's not to say, well, there is no such thing as a fully mutual breakup, right? But when this happened, Aaron Rodgers wanted to go. The Packers were ready to move on. And so that doesn't mean there were no hard feelings, but both sides got what they wanted ultimately. So I thought Aaron Rodgers, his comments in the locker room yesterday were telling to me. He was asked about this, I believe, by Brooke Pryor from ESPN about, does the distance change the way that you feel about this? And he said the phrase, I was floored by this, Chris. He said, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Mm-hmm. And I thought like, maybe that was a little shade at the Jets, right? Like, because he was like, I'd like to go somewhere else where they're going to give me everything I want, which Green Bay was not going to do. The Jets did. And he found out that didn't make him happy. And the grass is not always greener. And it does seem like he has found a place that does make him happy, where the culture is the way that he wants. And that he seems to have bought in. Chris, he has bought in. We'll get to some of this in the matchups and stuff, but he has bought in a way to Arthur Smith's offense that I just never thought he would. The style that he is playing is just not a style I thought I would see Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old playing. And that is a testament to him. And so I do think this is less acrimonious than it would have been had this been 2023. Like, I think that would have been blood and guts, like, F these guys. Like, it would have been a different thing. I think some distance has cooled heads. Brian Gutekunst is not playing. I do think there's probably some more acrimony there between Gutekunst and Rodgers. The general manager doesn't play. The players do. And Matt LaFleur pointed out this week, Chris, there aren't that many Packers that have even played with Aaron Rodgers on this team.
Aaron Rodgers brought that out himself. He was like, I don't know that many people over there now.
Right. It's like Rashawn Gary, Elton Jenkins, and then the 2022 draft class. And like, that's it. Because the 2021 draft class does not exist in Green Bay. And most of the 2020 draft class doesn't exist in Green Bay outside of Rashawn Gary and Darnell. That was the 19 class. But so even so, Jordan Love was in the 20 class, and the rest of that 20 class is out the door. So there just aren't that many guys that even played with him. I think it's less than 5 have played with him for more than one season in Green Bay. So the players are not going to care. This is, Matt LaFleur said, this is for you guys to talk about. Here we are talking about it. It is for us to talk about, and it does matter. Like, which side do you think wants this more and more? Like, whose extra is going to be more on Sunday, you think?
I think Aaron Rodgers wants it, but I think it's more of a nostalgic thing than it is a burn thing. I think he wants to have it in like that thing on his mantle in the back to be like, hey, when I got the Packers, I beat every team in the NFL. Yeah, I did that because this is his only chance he's going to get it. That right. So I think he wants that. Whereas the Packers, it's like if you beat Aaron Rodgers, it's like, okay, huzzah! But like the Packers are Super Bowl favorites to me. Like I think like this is a game that I think that they should win by their own merits, and like that's where
they're set up for a couple years here. Like one game is not gonna affect their outlook as much as it will affect Aaron Rodgers' legacy to have won it. Exactly. Which, if you're a Packers fan, is a reason to be, I think, nervous about it, because those sorts of things do matter. And attitude reflects leadership. Like if everyone can sense that this means a little bit extra to Aaron Rodgers, that is incentive for the team to play a little bit harder, to rally around him a little bit. I know this is not, Brett Favre when his dad passed away and like the receivers in that game caught everything on Monday Night Football. Like that was one of just the all time. I'll never forget watching that game, all time moment. Because Rodgers has been there for 6-8 months. So it's a different vibe. But that stuff I think does matter, at least on the margins. And we know Rodgers is like the pettiest player in the NFL. Like it will motivate him in a way that it would not motivate most players. He's going to manufacture slights, Chris, if he has to. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Buffalo Bills meet up in this Week 8 matchup between the 4-3 Panthers and 4-2 Bills. How you doing, my man?
Julian, as I record this podcast with you from just up the street here in Concord, North Carolina, I know exactly what you're talking about. There is a large contingency of Bills Mafia here in the other Queen City, right? Buffalo is also the Queen City. And I know this is one that's been exciting for many, including myself. Now, I will say a month ago, I was pretty excited. You know, now I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie to you based on some of the recent trends of both of these teams. But we know it'll be a spirited afternoon here in Charlotte. It'll be a good sports day, right? And I think that's going to be healthy for this town where there hasn't been that much good sports here lately. And I think this is going to be a good one on Sunday afternoon.
No, I know Charlotte FC, they're in the playoffs in MLS, so that's great. The Hornets are back in town, which could be a good thing depending upon how the season goes. But as far as looking at this game on Sunday, like, yeah, the energy and the buzz that's going to be there in Uptown, it was already going to be there because I'm expecting a lot of the locals who are Bills fans to be there at the stadium. I'll be there covering the game. I know you'll be in attendance as well. And I'm excited just to see what it looks like around the stadium with all that going on. But also, like, this is a game for Carolina where it's actually meaningful football, which they have not had in a long time as they sit here above 500 for the first time since October of 2021. So looking at this game from the Bills' perspective, Joe, what is the biggest storyline heading into this matchup?
Well, this is a Bills team that's coming out of the bye, riding a 2-game losing streak, and that's not very characteristic of this Bills team under Sean McDermott. And Sean McDermott's been really good at getting wins out of the bye, 8-0 so far in his tenure. This is his 9th opportunity to get a win out of the bye, and boy, this team needs it. A couple of losses that were just very uncharacteristic against the Falcons and the Patriots. And just, I mean, look at it like this. The Patriots scored 23 points. The Falcons scored 24. The Bills lost both games, which is very surprising. They kind of got in their own way offensively with some turnovers, with some penalties that put them behind the sticks, and it just got a lot harder than it typically is. And so you come out of this bye looking for a win, hungry for a win, and knowing that Kansas City is the next game. You know, you drop this one, you're looking at 500 potentially if you can't beat Kansas City in 2 weeks. So this is a really important game for Buffalo. And the exciting part for the Bills is that they get some defensive reinforcements, and they've needed this. This defense has really struggled this year, and they're getting Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, 2 players they signed in free agency, and they didn't have a ton of cap space to work with, and they prioritized getting these 2 guys to elevate their defensive line rotation. Hoyt is an edge rusher. Ogunjobi, a local, right? Went to Ragsdale. Played his ball at Charlotte, the first ever draft pick out of Charlotte. So he gets to make his Bills debut here in Charlotte, and that's a big deal. The Bills rotate a ton up front, and so far this year, 60% of their defensive tackle snaps have been played by rookies or practice squad players. And so Larry Ogunjobi is a welcomed addition as a veteran with some know-how to this group. And there's also a dynamic at safety where Taylor Rapp has been a very disappointing player so far this year. And there's been a knee injury, and they're not sure when he's going to be back. Julian, that screams soft benching to me, and potentially the opportunity for Jordan Poyer, longtime Bill, that's kind of come back to get another opportunity to start there. So this is a Bills defense that needs to play better, and they're getting some reinforcements, which gives you some hope that it can come together in ways that it needs to for the Bills to be the team they're supposed to be this year.
Yeah, and man, life in the AFC gets so real. Like you mentioned there, if the Bills somehow drop this game on Sunday, Kansas City next week, and that's not the Chiefs team that we saw the first couple weeks of the season. No. They look like the full-fledged Chief team that Buffalo has beaten the last couple regular seasons, just when in the playoffs, things haven't gone your way at this point in time. So we'll see how that plays out next week. But looking at this game from the Panthers' perspective, it will be interesting to see who's out there for Buffalo defensively, because Carolina, not sure right now who their quarterback's going to be. Now, this has been interesting to me. We saw on Monday all the NFL insiders like Tom Pelissero, who was first, Ian Rappaport, and Adam Schefter report that Bryce Young sustained a high ankle sprain in that win on Sunday against the Jets, where he was stepped on late in the third quarter, walked off to the locker room under his own power, had a slight limp, didn't look to be something that was going to be significant that would keep him out for a long period of time. Maybe a game, but nothing more than that. So those reports come out that Bryce Young is not going to play. On Monday, Dave Canales tells us that it's a day-to-day situation with Bryce Young, and he does not want to say what the severity of the ankle injury is, even though all the reports and people that we trust and know to be right when these things are reported are saying he's not going to play. Fast forward today on Wednesday as we're recording this, Bryce Young did not practice. He was off to the side. And for the folks who don't understand that, when you see someone off to the side of practice during a media viewing portion where they're typically just stretching, doing individual drills once, maybe some special team stuff, that guy ain't going to play. And that was the case today on Wednesday with Bryce Young. So Dave's saying it's still day to day. I'm anticipating that Andy Dalton's going to be the starter on Sunday and that his backup will likely be Hendon Hooker. Now, Mike White, who was in Buffalo last year, has been brought to the practice squad, trying to get a little information there about the Bills. Certainly, Dave Canales said they would not shy away. He said, hey, he's a Panther now, so no reason for him not to tell us all the knowledge he has about the offense that former Panthers OC Joe Brady has up there right now in Buffalo. All the Panther connections, Shaq Thompson and Bean, Sean McDermott. We used to call it Panthers North. I think that's kind of a pejorative for Buffalo fans at this point in time, considering how well the Bills have gone the last couple of years and looking down here in Carolina. So there's a mystery. And I put that in quotes as far as whether Bryce Young's going to play. Newsflash, he's not playing, guys. So Andy Dalton will be out there on Sunday. And I think Andy can get the job done. We've seen the last 2 years, the first time he started against Seattle 2 years ago, last year against the Raiders, he's thrown for 300 Bills. The only time the Panthers done that so far this season was week 2 in that comeback attempt in Arizona. Outside of that, Bryce Young has not been able to throw for over 200 yards in any of their games, including their last 3 wins against Miami, against Dallas, and against New York on Sunday. So possibly the passing offense might see a boom, at least for 1 week of Andy out there. So, yeah, that's the main storyline. Will Bryce Young play? The answer is no.
Yeah, and I think that makes this game a little bit more interesting. I think Bryce Young certainly had his moments, high and low, but Andy Dalton, I think you kind of know what you're going to get. He's a veteran. He's seen every defense, and I think he can keep the offense on schedule. And we know Carolina's going to want to come in and run the ball, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about here the rest of the way. But Andy Dalton, as a veteran that can hit his back foot and know where to go with the football against the Bills defense that's offered a lot of space in the secondary, I think there's a level of concern that it is Andy Dalton on the Bills side of things, and maybe there was a better chance to win this game with Bryce Young at quarterback. So Carolina's 4-3, and it's less to do with their quarterback play, right? It's been about running the ball. It's been the improvements on defense. And, I think a veteran like Andy Dalton might be the right ticket for Carolina and give them their best chance to win on Sunday.
Yeah, and Rico Dowdle was excellent in those wins against Miami and Dallas when Chuba Hubbard was out with a calf injury. But I will give Bryce Young credit to some of the throws that he made in that comeback against the Dolphins and then in that win against Dallas. So he may not put up gaudy numbers or really be efficient throughout the game, but in the fourth quarter, and that's really been throughout his career, when they've needed him to make plays, he's made those game-winning type of plays. Just the problem is, can you get it down in, down out in the first 3 quarters and not just at the end when you got to have it? It's nice that you can have it at those point in times, but at some point in time, he's going to have to be a little bit more consistent moving forward. And I'll be curious to see how the play calling adjusts with Andy Dalton as a starting quarterback, at least the presumed starter from my perspective of what's been reported. And we'll see whether Bryce will be able to go. My expectation is that will not be the case.